Welcome to the ISO 27001 Advanced ISMS Auditing Techniques workshop. In the next few minutes, we'll explore advanced auditing methods that go beyond basic compliance checking. You'll learn risk-based audit planning, techniques for evaluating control effectiveness rather than just existence, how to audit complex areas like cloud services and AI systems, and how to write findings that drive real improvement. This workshop is designed for experienced auditors who want to sharpen their skills. Let's get started. Let's start with risk-based audit planning, the approach that separates effective auditors from checkbox auditors. The fundamental shift in advanced auditing is moving from checklist compliance to risk-based evaluation. Checklist auditing walks through requirements sequentially, verifying that documents exist and records are maintained. It produces a binary result, compliant or non-compliant, for each item. While thorough on the surface, this approach misses systemic weaknesses, fails to assess whether controls actually reduce risk, and cannot identify the interconnected failures that cause real security incidents. Risk-based auditing allocates audit time based on risk significance. High-risk areas receive deeper examination. The auditor evaluates whether controls actually reduce risk effectively, not just whether they exist on paper. By tracing the path from risk assessment through treatment decisions to residual risk acceptance, the auditor validates the entire risk management chain. This approach reveals systemic patterns that checklist auditing misses. Building a risk-based audit plan requires understanding the organization's risk profile before designing your audit approach. Begin by studying the organization's risk register, risk treatment plan, statement of applicability, and previous audit findings. Identify the highest-rated risks, the controls relied upon to treat them, and any areas where previous audits found weaknesses. This pre-audit research shapes where you will spend the most time during the audit itself. Identify 3 to 5 focus areas where your audit will go deepest. These should be areas where residual risk remains high, where controls are complex or newly implemented, where significant changes have occurred since the last audit, or where previous audits identified trends. Communicate these focus areas to the auditee so they can prepare relevant evidence. Design audit trails that follow a risk from identification through assessment, treatment, control implementation, monitoring, and incident response. Rather than auditing clause by clause, follow cross-cutting themes. For example, trace how a data breach risk is assessed, what controls mitigate it, how those controls are monitored, and what happens when they fail. This reveals the real effectiveness of the ISMS. Calibrate your audit depth based on risk. Spend more time on high-risk areas with complex controls and less on well-established low-risk areas. This does not mean ignoring low-risk areas entirely. Sampling is still required, but the depth and rigor should be proportional to risk significance. Explain this calibration in your audit plan so the approach is transparent. Now let's cover advanced techniques for evaluating whether controls are actually effective, not merely present. These techniques separate experienced auditors from those who merely verify documentation. Corroboration means verifying the same fact through at least 2 independent sources. If a policy says access reviews happen monthly, check the review records, interview the person responsible, and examine actual access logs to see if revocations follow reviews. A single source of evidence is never sufficient for a significant finding. 3 sources make a finding defensible. Process tracing follows a single transaction through the entire control chain. Pick a specific incident and trace it from detection through classification, response, escalation, resolution, root cause analysis, and corrective action. This reveals gaps between controls that checklist auditing misses, the handoff points where things fall through the cracks. Most auditors look for evidence that controls work. Advanced auditors also look for evidence that controls fail. Check for access reviews that found nothing to revoke. Is that realistic? Look for incident records with no root cause analysis. Search for risk assessments that identified no high risks. Absence of negative findings often indicates a control that is not operating effectively rather than a perfectly secure environment. Trend analysis examines control data over multiple periods to identify patterns. Are security incidents increasing or decreasing? Are access review exceptions growing? Is patch compliance improving? A single snapshot can look compliant while the trend reveals deterioration. Request data for the last 12 months and look for patterns that a point-in-time assessment would miss. Modern ISMS implementations include complex areas that require specialized audit techniques. Auditing cloud services requires understanding the shared responsibility model for each service. Request configuration snapshots from cloud management consoles. Review IAM policies and security group rules directly, and verify that the provider's own certifications cover the services being consumed. Do not accept a cloud provider's SOC2 report as evidence that the customer's configuration is secure. Those are separate assurances. Auditing AI systems within an ISMS requires examining how AI-specific risks were assessed, whether training data governance controls exist, how model outputs are monitored for bias and drift, and whether AI ethical considerations are addressed. This is a rapidly evolving area with limited audit precedent, so focus on the risk assessment methodology and evidence that the organization is actively managing AI-specific risks. Auditing remote working controls requires adapting traditional techniques. Review endpoint management evidence showing that remote devices are encrypted, patched, and monitored. Test VPN and access control configurations. Interview remote workers about their actual practices. Do they use personal devices, share workspaces, or print sensitive documents? Remote work auditing relies more on technical evidence and interviews than physical observation. Auditing supply chain security means evaluating how the organization manages risks it cannot directly control. Review supplier security assessments and their methodology. Examine contracts for security requirements, incident notification clauses, and right-to-audit provisions. Evaluate whether the organization actually monitors supplier security posture or relies solely on initial assessments. Focus on the management system for supplier risk, not the suppliers themselves. Let's close with the most important lessons for advanced ISMS auditing. First, risk-based auditing is fundamentally more effective than checklist auditing. By allocating audit time proportional to risk significance, you focus your expertise where it matters most and produce findings that drive meaningful security improvement rather than bureaucratic corrections. Second, corroborate every significant finding through multiple independent sources. A finding based solely on document review may miss reality. A finding supported by documents, interviews, and observation is defensible and credible. The best auditors routinely triangulate evidence before forming conclusions. Third, deliberately look for evidence of control failures alongside evidence of success. Negative testing reveals the gap between documented controls and operational reality. A perfectly clean set of evidence often indicates insufficient testing, not perfect security. And fourth, write findings that explain the business impact and likely root cause, not just the requirement that is unmet. A finding that says access reviews are not monthly is less useful than one that explains the risk exposure and suggests the root cause is unclear ownership. Actionable findings drive real improvement. That wraps up our overview of advanced ISMS auditing techniques. In the full Udemy course, you'll get in-depth instruction on risk-based audit planning and execution, advanced evidence evaluation techniques with practical exercises, specialized guidance for auditing cloud, AI, and remote working environments, and finding writing workshops that produce actionable, high-impact audit reports. Click the link below or scan the QR code to enroll and take your auditing skills to the next level. Thank you for watching. If you found this overview helpful, subscribe to the channel for more content, and check the description for the link to the full course. See you in the next video.